Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, guaranteed the best Glazov gang in its history. Our three titans this evening. Michael Hausam, a writer at IJReview.com, and he now has his own radio show, House Rules with Mike Hausam. Did I say it right?
You did. It was perfect.
Okay, fantastic.
Even with the wonky Canadian accent, it was perfect. Thank you.
And Marie Murrell, back by popular demand. She is the CEO of Politichicks.com and the author of the new blockbuster book, just out, What Women Really Want.
It's not out yet. It will be September 2nd.
And the conservative entrepreneur and the walking encyclopedia, Monty Morton.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Glazov Gang.
Say that again. How do you entrepreneur? Say it again.
Well, it's Canadian accent. But
say it again, though. I like it.
I will later on.
It's funny.
Anne-Marie. But the book really is out now.
No,
but
it's not out now. It will be out September 2nd.
Okay.
It's not out yet.
Okay, but I've seen a few copies floating around.
You have, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We've got little advance copies.
Okay, so that's what it is.
Types.
Fantastic.
By the way, if you get an advance copy, I got $40 on eBay for the advance copy, so that was pretty nifty.
Excellent, excellent. Before we get on to the very serious issues of our time, Anne-Marie, under a minute, what is your wonderful book about?
It is about... It's to counteract the war on women, because there is no such thing. There is no war on women. There's a war on all conservatives in general. But what we really want is freedom. We don't want tyranny, and that's as simple. That's it. That's basically it. We want the freedom to raise our children the way we want. We want men to not be emasculated. We are anti-feminists.
Okay.
It's a good book.
May I ask Anne-Marie a question quickly?
Uh-oh.
Okay.
I'm sorry to cut
Before
into
you
our
go,
service.
but
Okay.
you're obviously referring to the United States because there is a war on women, as we know, in several parts of the world.
Well, yeah.
You're obviously referring to the...
We also talk about the world war on... The actual world war on women. Yeah,
you're referring to the
that.
accusation of leftists against the GOP,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Monty, go ahead with
Right.
your question, but keep it appropriate.
Oh, dear.
Because of the title, What Women Really Want. I know where your mind travels sometimes. So go ahead.
I really want to be serious.
Yes.
It has
yes.
always fascinated me, and this is serious. How does the left get away with propagating such ridiculous rhetoric? And I mean, why is it so pervasive, and why do they keep using it?
Because they have the microphone. They own the media. They can tell everyone on earth that men and people are mean because they have to pay $25 for birth control.
Actually, it's probably $9, but...
It's probably $9.
Yeah,
I don't even know.
yeah.
That ship has sailed. That's another book.
Okay, thank you very much, but Michael was nobly and stoically quiet. Do you want to add anything before we begin?
I have nothing to add about what women want. Nothing.
What we really want.
What you
though.
really want.
Okay.
Yeah, really,
All
really
right.
want.
This
Let-
is all going to be edited.
Let us begin. The panel of titans for the Glazov Gang. Let us begin. Hamas versus Israel. What is happening at this moment, Michael, and your angle on the war?
The thing that I noticed the most, I've written a couple of articles about this recently, is the constant trying to make there be an equivalence between what Hamas is doing and what Israel is doing. In fact, today I was at the gym, and it was even on Fox, and the way the woman introduced the segment was I forget exactly what she said, but it was something along the lines of the incredible controversy because of the shelling that Israel is doing on schools. And that's the way she introduced the subject, as the terrible controversy. Not that Israel is attacking schools. Not the terrible controversy that Hamas is hiding behind school children. Not the terrible controversy that Hamas is waging war in such a way to attract that kind of attention. Even on Fox, the idea was, it's unfortunate that Israel is having to do this, not it's vile, immoral, and evil that Hamas is doing this. So whenever I hear that stuff, it frankly makes me want, makes my head explode. I get so angry about it.
And Michael, a clever, intelligent, man like yourself would explain this phenomenon? How?
They are fighting Israel in the press of the Western and the remainder of the world. You don't see press pictures of Hamas terrorists dead. You don't see press pictures of somebody sneaking a missile through a tunnel up into a nursery. You see a woman crying about her baby. I mean, that's a war not being waged against. I mean, to a certain extent, it's against an enemy, but it's a war against public opinion. The result of that, then, there was a clip I put up. I think it was on Monday. Geraldo was talking about the terrible things that Israel is doing and how embarrassed he is, and that Israel is losing the fight for world opinion. And I'm like, I don't think that Israel is actually fighting a war against world opinion. They're fighting a war against people that are trying to kill them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Michael. And I think it also shows how much the stealth jihadists are succeeding in our society, and how much the left is, you wouldn't think they would, but they're gaining ground constantly and molding the boundaries of our discourse. Because if it wasn't already evident, I mean, the terrorists of Hamas, in terms of the tunnel building, even the manuals that are coming out teaching the Palestinians how to use civilians, etc., etc.
Right.
I mean, there's no mystery anymore, and yet this thesis and this interpretation in our media that it's these two bullies fighting on the same block, it's just incredible.
Even if it is bullies. My number 3 kiddo had an issue at school last year with a bully. And I said, and the kid was pushing him around and was taking stuff out of his lunch. And I said, here's the deal, Jack. The next time that happens, you need to punch him somewhere in this area as hard as you possibly can. And he said, well, Papa, he hasn't punched me. I said, you know what? You need to take the violence to a level to the point that he won't do it anymore. Yeah. I mean, that's the way we used to wage war. That it was horrific and awful, but it was with such fury that it put an end to it.
Okay.
And we're not doing that now.
Excellent point. I don't think we told Anne-Marie or Monty, but this show is just me and Michael talking.
It's so nice to have them here, though.
So, right? Michael, Oscar.
I feel like I'm watching a tennis match.
Anne-Marie Murrell.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the manual was the big thing that came out today. I think that's fascinating. That the way that they're presenting it, the reason that it's not just because it's such a small area, which is what Hillary Clinton said, that's the reason they're hiding, because there's not that much room to hide bombs. The reason they're doing that, they want children to die. They want the pictures to be in the media. They want the pictures of children, dead children, because that makes them, that they believe that rises them above Israel. And it's doing that with a lot of these people who have microphones. The idiots, the vapid, imbecilic monsters like Penelope Cruz and Javier Bardem, who think that who are defending Hamas. They don't have a clue. And I guess they were on vacation somewhere in the south of France, perhaps when Israel was being bombed and didn't retaliate. I think they just missed that part of the story.
I don't
I'm
think
not
so.
sure. Yeah, I don't either. But I don't know. It's dumbfounding. Do people not understand what the word friend means?
Thank you, Anne-Marie. And I would think that, yes, we do have a lot of morons, but I think a lot of people with calculation are acting in this way because I think there's frighteningly enough a growing a cult of worship around the Palestinian death culture in our because the left has framed it such in our society. And I will leave the rest of the wisdom to Monty Morton. Go ahead.
I actually like what Michael said, and it is the idea of trying to draw a moral equivalent between Hamas and Israel. And I think where I start with this entire subject is I start with the covenant of the Hamas. And the preamble says, and I excuse me for reading, but I just want to make sure I quote it directly. It says, Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. And the most anti-Semitic remark, comment, incitement is Article 7 of the covenant. And basically it says, the day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight Jews and kill them. Then the Jews will hide behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees will cry out, "O Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him." And the fact is, Israel was born out of the Holocaust, and many on the left would have you believe that Israel has become arrogant with power and that Israel is the aggressor. But if we take a look just quickly, historically, Israel was attacked in 1948, Israel was attacked in 1967, Israel was attacked in 1973, and all the land gains did not occur from Israel attacking anyone. It occurred from them trying to protect themselves. And what happened when Israel gave up the land? They got attacked again. And Israel can destroy Hamas anytime they want to, but they don't. Israel, Jamie, is fighting for its survival. Israel is fighting for its survival against someone who wants their absolute destruction. And let me finish up with, I think, was just absolutely succinct, it was brief, and it was brilliant. And it was Dennis Prager's statement. And he said, if Hamas puts down their weapons and rockets, what would happen? There'd be peace. If Israel did the same thing, what would happen? There'd be war.
Very profound commentary. Thank you very much, Monty Morton. Before we move on to our other issues, I may ask a question, but I see wisdom twinkling in the eyes of the other two guests. Michael, how would you like to summarize and conclude on this segment?
I don't have any wisdom to say with that. I think he said it perfectly. I guess there is one thing, and what I'll do is I'll steal it from Victor Davis Hanson, who's somebody that actually is wise. He was pointing out the criticism in Western Europe of Israel, contrasting it with the absolute silence in Russia, with the saber rattling and the areas that, like in Cyprus, and the areas that Russia has taken over and is pushing itself, frankly, a far more aggressive way than Israel has been in terms of taking over lands and oppressing people. The difference in Europe, why is it okay to criticize the Jews for effectively just defending themselves, but silence about Russia when Russia is proactively going after areas that have nothing to do with their own country? And that is that Russia actually is a threat to Western Europe, but Israel isn't. So you can criticize Israel and the Jews, and obviously there's a huge history behind that in Western Europe, but there's no payback that's going to happen in Western Europe for criticizing Israel like there potentially could be if they were to criticize Russia. I just found the fundamental question was why criticizing one and silence on the other, and I thought he made a pretty interesting point about that.
Thank you very much. Anne-Marie, whatever you want to say it before these two questions. If you don't want to get to my questions right away, your thoughts on how Israelis did in terms of the war in the recent weeks, and what you thought of Obama and Kerry and their behavior. Go ahead.
I love the post that Daniel Greenfield had on front page today. It showed a picture of Kerry riding a pink bicycle. Did you see that?
Oh, yes. So
and
funny.
somebody said that it was dangerous because he wasn't wearing a helmet. I think that
with the girl's top bar coming down.
Exactly.
Oh,
I think that's about
perfect.
as brave as anyone in the Obama administration has shown. Krauthammer said that Kerry was almost like a lawyer for Hamas, that he is so seemingly anti-Israel, all of them, the entire Obama administration.
Well, he's dying for peace, just some kind of thing, so he can get his Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
Solving the issue, who's right,
Peace in
who's
the Middle
wrong,
East.
just we have peace in our time, so he can go to Stockholm. At least that's my opinion.
Monty, go ahead.
I just have a message for my fellow Jews out there who are watching this, and my fellow Jews who consider themselves diehard liberals and on the left. And I heard something on the radio driving in today. So it's not something based upon my sagacity. I'm not that wise. It's just something I'm going to lift. Most conservatives will say Israel has a right to exist, but they'll never follow it up with the word but. Most liberals and many Jewish liberals will say Israel has the right to exist, but there is no but.
My titan of panels, let us now move on to ISIS and the takeover in Iraq. And we will begin with Michael. What do you think about Obama's surrender of Iraq and the killing fields that we see have started there?
You know, we took over Germany effectively after World War II and spent a boatload of money and time and energy transferring Western Europe into a functional community again. Now, obviously, there was a culture of commerce and a culture of Western democracy that never existed in the Middle East. But, 60-some years later, how many hundreds of thousands of people are still at Ramstein and all the various bases in Germany? Mm-hmm. Yet, we're in Iraq, and maybe we want to avoid the nation building or the imperialist words that have been used to criticize us wrongly, in my opinion. But, I mean, the ink isn't dry on solving some of the issues there, and we're gone. I mean, there wasn't even a couple hundred American military folks. Contrast that with Western Europe that were still there 60 years later. I mean, I think that was a disaster waiting to happen. Not that I think we should spend a bunch more time and energy and money in Iraq, but I mean, the vacuum, here's what it is. I think that the Obama administration assumes that peace is the natural state of things. Mm. And if things are just left alone and not meddled with, peace will happen. But that's just not the natural state of things. The natural state of things is conflict and anger. Yeah. And when we left, the vacuum that was created wasn't filled with unicorns and exactly. It's not hemp-wearing Portlandians that would be running in Iraq. It's the
right.
people who will kill others to get their way.
Well, absolutely. And Michael, there also doesn't necessarily have to be even nation building, but there could be certain security measures. And we know now it's come out that the Iraqis were actually asking Obama for certain military help, and he didn't give it.
And we bailed.
And they bailed.
Right.
And another thing, always intriguing and interesting, we're seeing all the horrifying videos now of ISIS and the killing fields, killing the Shias, killing the Christians, all these executions. Not one word in our media. And number one, it doesn't fit the Marxist interpretation that rules our media and rules our society, that somewhere if we just share a little bit and give everybody a piece of the pie, as Obama wants everybody to think, that everything's going to be okay. And the fact is that Islamic theology is behind this, and so therefore the media cannot touch it. Why don't I give the torch to you now, Anne-Marie, on that note?
Well, now, Jamie, to be really fair, because there is a big story in the media right now. Beyonce, she's having a lot of trouble with her marriage, and she's on tour right now with her husband, and there's a lot of trouble there. So that's possibly one of the reasons.
Did you see the picture of Northwest was so cute?
I know.
Right?
I know. The Kardashian.
Yes.
There are so many other things that they have to focus on that they can't deal with beheadings and pedophile weddings and 150,000 Christians leaving Iraq and trying to find sanctuary somewhere because if they don't denounce their Christianity, if they don't give in to Islam, they die by the sword. So, yeah, but the media can't. They can't handle that kind of story.
Yeah.
You kidding?
And because it just doesn't fit the leftist narrative.
No.
And I would say this is just shameful and shameless. I know I was in academia for many years, and I'm still waiting for the leftist feminists in women's studies departments across the United States to stand up for the victims of Islamic gender apartheid, whether the victims are Muslim girls or Christian girls or what have you. And they're silent, and it shows that they really don't care about women. It's really about them trying to destroy their host society, capitalist democratic society, and women's rights is just a weapon for them when it serves their ends.
It's in your book. United in hate, by the way.
And also
It
to
is.
the other guests, try to work my book into the discussion whenever you can. Monty, go ahead.
Buy United in Hate. It's on Amazon.
Thank you. Excellent, excellent. These are the kind of conversations I like.
Okay, that was the most odd segue I've ever done.
Okay, Monty, go ahead.
About a year ago, on the Glazov gang, we spoke about how Iraq was going to implode. And, you know, it's not as if we are foreign policy wonks, but it was pretty obvious to us at the time as to what was going to happen. This is a foreign policy disaster of the first order. And I have to remind some of those people who might be watching, and, you know, here's a question. Who said Iraq will be one of our greatest achievements? I think all of us on the panel know who. It was Joe Biden. And yet, it was the Bush administration who warned back in 2005 that terrorists will try to reestablish a caliphate throughout the entire Muslim world. As Michael said, if there's a vacuum.
Right.
And the vacuum has been created, and that's exactly what's happening. And what's interesting is when the Bush administration warned that, the liberals jeered at such predictions, particularly when the word caliphate was used. And from what I understand, as far back as 2013, the Iraqi officials started requesting from the U.S. that we start either drones, strikes in targeted areas. And the administration knew in 2013 that ISIS was already gaining a stronghold in the country. And what's interesting is even the New York Times reported that in May of 2014, Maliki secretly asked the Obama administration to carry out airstrikes, and the Obama administration refused. Yet, the president authorized drone strikes against terrorists in Pakistan and Yemen, hasn't done anything in Iraq, and the failure in Iraq falls squarely upon this administration.
Thank you very much, Monty. Michael, you are writing words of wisdom. Go ahead.
You know, it just made me think of something, but it kind of goes back to the Israel deal, but I'll bring up something else about ISIS that really bothers me. The destruction of historical sites is incredibly upsetting as well. I saw a picture a couple of weeks ago about supposedly Jonah's tombstone was destroyed. And then there was a video released, I put it up on IJR, that there was a mosque or a temple, it wasn't a temple, it was a mosque of some kind, that's been there for 1,300 years, something like that, that was blown up because the ISIS can't accept any sort of representations of physical form at all. They find that it's idolatry. So there's these videos of these historical sites being blown up and people being killed in the middle of it, and it's shocking to me. It's crazy to me.
Okay. Anne-Marie?
It makes no sense at all why people aren't more alarmed. The fact that we can go on Facebook and see men holding heads, and that's not the thing that's been blared out on every single news channel.
Okay.
That's astounding to me. It's like, what else will it take to make people wake up and understand what's happening? And do they really think that this isn't going to eventually seep over here?
Thank you, Anne-Marie. I would agree with you, of course. I would add to that there are realms where we do understand why it's happening is because we have a radical in chief that's in office who's a leftist, and whenever U.S. interests are hurt, he's happy. And I really believe that this administration wants to see the decline of U.S. security interests and U.S. power, so that makes sense. And the left has, as I said before, controls our media and has dumbed morality down and politicized things to such an extent. It's in its interests where much of the population now shrugs or turns away when it sees something out of the leftist narrative happening. And we'll continue that discussion, and I guess we'll continue it with this new subject that I now want to bring up. Our contributing editor at Front Page Magazine, Stephen Brown, one of our best columnists, wrote an article for Front Page, Exodus, French style. And it's about French Jews actually fleeing not some crazy country in the world where maybe Jews would have to flee from, but France. Your thoughts on this, Monty?
What's interesting is incrementally and over maybe the last 2 generations, the immigration of Muslim population into Europe has been startling, particularly in France and Belgium. But in France, the Muslim population in France is nearing about 7 million, which is about 10% of the population. And when Muslims demonstrate in France, it's not a small group of 100 or 50. There was one demonstration with over 3,000 Muslims burning an Israeli flag. And what's happening is the French immigrants to Israel is now up 60%. And I don't think it takes a genius. All one has to do is go back to Germany, 1930s, and see what happened there and transpose some of that into the current day. And ultimately, that's what's going to happen in France. That's what's going to happen in the rest of Europe. And if the Middle East gets its way and obliterates Israel, they're coming after us.
Yeah, and I wanted to qualify, of course, that it's not a surprise that we know about anti-Semitism in France. It has anti-Semitism, I would argue, is part of its character and part of its past. But in the past, maybe you might see some anti-Semitism, in a cartoon or in the culture in some way. But now, Jewish people are actually fleeing the country because they're in physical danger. So this is quite a departure, to say the least.
The Council of Jewish Institutions just recently put out a report that violence against Jews in France is up 40%.
We are in quite scary times, Anne-Marie.
And once again, I don't understand why more Jews in America aren't coming to the defense of things like this. I mean, do they have Stockholm syndrome? Maybe some kind of, because where they relate more with the enemy and people that mean them harm than they do the good guys. Why is there no outcry?
Well, this
Why?
Absolutely, Anne-Marie, and this is interlinked with leftist Jews voting for Obama, who is bullying Israel. And of course, it's interlinked with the phenomenon of why Noam Chomsky would embrace Nasrallah of Hezbollah.
I mean, Ben Shapiro talks about it, and Evans say it, and they try to explain it, that they're not actually practicing Jews. But just knowing their history, where's the pushback?
Thank you. Michael?
A few years ago, I was in both France and also in the UK. It was right around the time that Mark Stein's book came out, America Alone. And Stein was making the point that just birth rates alone, in addition to importing from primarily the Middle East, labor, because frankly in France and in a lot of Western Europe, they would prefer, they're in school till they're 35 years old, then they work 25 hours a week until they're about 50, and then they're retired on the state thereafter. So the people that are doing the work are being imported, and they're from Tangiers and places like that across the Mediterranean. Well, that's at an incredibly high birth rate within a very aggressive religion. And I remember that I was walking right across from Buckingham Palace, and it shocked me as I was looking around. And if you guys have all been there, there's beautiful parklands, and it's green, and there's tons of people out on a Sunday afternoon. And I realized there's tons of people, and I realized I don't see the face of a single woman. I don't see the hair of a single woman. I see a lot of guys, and then I see women walking behind them with a lot of little children. That it's literally changing the culture. And the culture that it's changing to is one that's very aggressive. I saw a picture today of a guy that was in France, and he was holding up a sign that said, "Sharia law is coming, and there's nothing you can do to stop us." And I mean, if there's any place on the planet that you would not expect people to defend themselves, it's going to be France. I mean, it's a joke, but it's absolutely true. You have one culture that is intent on taking over every aspect of the culture, and you've got another one that historically has been like, yeah, we don't like the Jewish people, and we'll back off of anybody that presses against us.
We do know that the Israelis are putting up a hell of a fight right now, and our hearts are behind them 100%. Before we go, it is called the Glazov Gang moment. For every single member of the Glazov Gang, 45 seconds each, whatever is primarily on your mind or how you would like to end the show. Michael?
I would like people to follow me on Twitter at mphouse, and I'd like them to listen to my radio show at Truth Be Told Media or dailypaulradio.com. It's every afternoon from 5 to 6 Eastern. That we have really good guests. Anne Marie's going to be on Thursday, which I'm really excited about. And it's probably 2/3 politics and 1/3 culture, and frankly, whatever I find interesting.
And congratulations on your new radio show, Michael.
Thanks,
and it was an honor to have you back on the Glazov Gang.
It was an honor to be here, Jamie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And Anne-Marie Murrell, your Glazov Gang moment.
All right. I'm about to relaunch Politichicks. There's going to be some major changes. Some that I'm still not even sure I'm going to do yet because it's kind of scary. But we're going to dive more into the culture, too. We can't ignore the culture anymore. We're going to bring in Hollywood. We're going to bring in sports. I've got a sports writer. We are tackling parenting, Common Core, every kind of issue that across the board, because the only way we're preaching to the choir right now. So keep following politichicks.com because, wow, it's going to be really different very soon. And buy my book.
What Women Really Want, in bookstores everywhere on September
2nd.
On September 2nd, get it then. And final words of wisdom to the Buddha of knowledge of the Glazov Gang, Monty Morton.
It's more of a pet peeve.
The way I host the show?
No. It's more of a pet peeve. And admittedly, I wasn't prepared for this. I didn't know there's a 45-second closing segment, but this is a pet peeve of mine. It goes to whether it's the right or the left. It's the ill-informed, the uninformed, and what I call the political narcoleptic. And the political narcoleptic is someone that, if you're having a discussion with them, I don't want to say debate, because that implies something at a different level, but if you're having a discussion and you give them a fact, we've seen it, we've heard it, the subject gets changed, or their eyes glaze over and they go to sleep. And that's why I call them political narcoleptics. And I just wish people would be a little bit more fact-based and a little bit less, gee, this is the way I would love to see things.
And that's what the Glazov Gang is changing and will change more, right?
Right. Thank you.
Yes.
Michael, Anne-Marie, and Monty, thank you for joining the Glazov Gang. We'll see you next week. Good night.